Yes, thank you so much, Mark. Hi, everyone. I'm Rafaela Ennisberg. I'm the founder of the Content Engineering Agency. And today I want to take you somewhere unexpected before we talk about content as linked data. And I actually want to take you back 3,000 years ago, because what I've learned is that building content infrastructure at an enterprise scale is that the architecture of meaning is not something new. It's actually something that we keep rediscovering. And once you see that pattern, it's something that you really cannot unsee. So let me just dive in. And before I do that, a little bit of context on who I am and why I'm here. So I've actually spent years at Albert Heijn, which is one of the largest retailers in the Netherlands. I've been working there for 10 years. Started as a senior creative content specialist, and now I'm actually a content engineering consultant that helps the organization with structuring content and giving it meaning wherever it is in the organization. And that allows the digital infrastructure to let content move through our pipelines, our channels. And we have a lot of channels, considering 4.7 million customers that we need to serve. So what I've been keep coming across over and over is that organizations have huge amounts of content, and almost no one uh, knows what it actually means. And the content itself also is deprived of meaning. So we only know where it lives, we only know where it is stored, but to know what it means is another thing. And that gap between the storage of content and the meaning of content is what I help organizations close. And through my agency, through my framework that I will also show you, and yeah, through talks like this one. So let's go back to where I want to take you, which is actually 3,000 years ago, starting with the I Ching. And I don't know if any one of you is familiar with this, but it's basically called the Book of Transformation. And it's capturing universal patterns, more or less. And so what happens is that it consists of 64 hexagrams, and each one of them is built from two elements: a broken line and an unbroken line, a 0 and a 1. And each hexagram connects to others through transformation rules. So every node has properties, every node has relationships, and every node has context. So as you can already see, the I Ching is actually a linked data model if you look closely at it. And it was actually built 3,000 years ago, and not discovered by, but actually recognized by Leibniz, who was the creator of binary as we know it. And he received a diagram of the I Ching, and he recognized his own binary system in it. So he actually almost didn't invent it. He rediscovered the same pattern that existed 3,000 years ago, which are these two states, infinite combinations. And that same structural logic became the foundation of modern computing as we know it today. So if you fast forward to the World Wide Web, which was invented by Berners-Lee, um, he actually did not invent it as a filing system, but he invented it as a network of meaningful nodes. So through resource description frameworks, URIs, ontologies, all of it is built to carry meaning and not just to store content. So the architecture of meaning, it really doesn't change. It's only the medium that changes throughout time. And if we look at how we can organize the web, there are two ways we can do this. So one way is use it as a storage for files, like this folder structure that you see on the left, where each file knows where it lives, but that's it. And there's not immediately meaning attached to it. And what happens when we use the web just like this is that we see that content gets duplicated, especially if you look inside organizations where people only look at storing files and not so much as applying meaning, is that different teams start using different meanings for the same terms that mean the same thing. Um, and we see a lot of duplication of content across departments. And so when you try to feed this information to, for example, AI, well, the AI cannot traverse meaning. It can only flatten it to a mean. So if we want to do this in a better way, we need to look at, okay, how can we organize our information as a meaningful spine? And on the right side, well, you actually see what Duncan has already shown us, is that you actually need every entity to know what it is, what it relates to, and what it means. Um, so for example, here, one product entity is connected to a category, and it also contains information about allergens. Um, and that really helps to, whenever you're giving or displaying products to customers, such as Albert Heijn, who has many customers, many of those customers have some sort of allergy. So it's really good to know how those products are related to those allergens, and also how you can then personalize whatever a customer sees on your platform, that he or she gets the most relevant product that fits customer preferences. Um, so when every entity knows what it is and what it relates to and what it means, you can use and reuse this information pattern in any channel, any language, and any system. So here's the question I want you to carry into the next content strategy meeting or information architecture meeting. Like, do you know, does your content know its own meaning, or does it only know where it is stored? So, let that sit for a second, because now I want to take you to how you can grow a spine from the inside out. So not just looking at the web as your point of information, but actually look, how can you architecture information within an organization in the way that the semantic web was intended. And this is where we can really connect ancient structure to semantic web principles and put it into enterprise practice. So I've developed a framework which is called Prismas, and it contains 7 layers, and I want to walk you through them from bottom to top, because that's the order in which you actually build this in an organization. So you don't start at the top with AI and automation, which many companies are trying to do right now. You really have to start at the ground, which is where the unglamorous stuff is. And the first layer is production. So where does content originate? What is its source? Where does your content come from? Who creates what? And is it traceable? And if you cannot answer these questions, then you already have a problem, because you'll end up with 5 teams writing product descriptions for the same item, each with slightly different facts. And that happens more than anyone wants to admit. So not only in retail, where I am, which sometimes we call it a small government, but you can imagine how this works in government agencies and government itself. So the second layer is refinement. And this is where, before content really enters your ecosystem, ideally, where you ask yourself if it meets a certain level of quality before you start to use it. So when do we know when our content is actually done? Have you defined it? Because in most organizations, content just flows in freely into the system without anyone knowing whether the quality is okay. Mostly see half-finished products, inconsistently formatted content, approved by nobody. And really, this layer is really your quality gate before your content enters the system. And the next level is actually where most companies, well, it's a very critical layer, but most company overlook this. It's the layer of identity. So this is actually the layer that makes content traceable, and where you need to ask yourself, does every asset have a unique persistent identifier so that systems can point to it reliably? And you can think of this as a passport number or a citizen number. Without it, we cannot trace where our citizen is present. And without it, you cannot, well, within within an enterprise, without it, you can have the same product living in three different systems, under three different names, and nobody knows that they are the same thing. So the system doesn't know they're the same thing, but sometimes even humans don't know that it's the same thing if it doesn't have a unique identifier. And now the fourth layer is my favorite layer, which is semantics. And this is where content stops being a file and starts being meaningful. That's why it's my favorite layer. So here you need to ask yourself if your teams use consistent terminology, and whether a machine can read your content and understand what it's about, not just where it lives. And this is the layer where you start to see taxonomies um, being enabled. You start to see knowledge graphs and ontologies, and this is really shared meaning that systems need to be able to understand in between each other, but also within each system. What does the content mean? What does the data mean? Um, and a simple way to do this is by applying tags to your content from a controlled vocabulary. So that's really a very approachable way to do this. And then I hear a lot of people talking about ontology right now because AI is running amok, and
Mm,
people really are trying to have a grasp on it. But it's not immediately necessary to have an ontology. Just start with the basics and start applying consistent terms, have a controlled vocabulary, etc., etc. Um, and then when we have that meaning, we can start moving content around in a safe way. So this is where you can actually um, be comfortable with your content being published across multiple channels, without it losing its meaning, and its connection to its original source. So here you can ask yourself, okay, is our content portable? Can we publish across channels within an hour without someone having to manually copy paste the content into five different CMS systems or five different digital asset management systems? Because this is where structured entities can feed any channel automatically, and that's really the payoff of dealing with the unglamorous layers, that layer 1, 2, and 3 and 4. But when it starts to really get um, you know having a tangible value to how content is managed. Now, when we have motion in place, we can start letting our content be autonomous. And this is where AI enters. So this is ideally where you start applying AI, because now the AI can optimize what it really understands. Because your content now has identity, it has semantics, it has structure underneath it, and this really helps you to personalize content at scale, automate recommendations, even let systems adapt without human intervention. But without the foundation of the previous layers, you're just feeding noise into a model, and you're hoping for the best. And that's what we're seeing in many organizations
mm,
nowadays. So eventually, we want to reach the holy grail, which is layer 7, scaling our content. So this is where content becomes a strategic asset to the organization, where you can really see the return on investment through analytics, through predictive analytics, feedback loops that inform you what to create next, or what to decommission. And this is really where content stops being a cost center and starts generating measurable return on investment. And here's what I see in almost every organization I work with. They're somewhere between layer 1 and 2, asking whether their content is good enough, but they never ask the more important question: does our content know what it is? Does our
Mm,
content know what it means? And that shift from quality control to semantic identity really happens at layer 3 and 4. And until you make it, everything above is built on sand. So,
mm,
really start zooming in on layer 3 and 4, because that's really where the money is, basically, and where the meaning is. Um, so I want to close off with this. Meaning, it does not exist in a node. It doesn't exist in a file. It doesn't exist in a source or a thing. Meaning really exists in the connections between things. And the symbol that you see here is hexagram 11 from the I Ching, and it means flow, integration, and harmony between forces. And when we translate that to information architecture, you can say flow, integration, and harmony between silos. Um, and a system in which everything is in its right relationship. So that is really what a well-architectured content system feels like from the inside. Not like the chaos that we are used to, and not content that is filed away in some silo and forgotten. So um, content in a right relationship to itself, to systems, to humans, and to machines. That is what we are building when we build a spine. So thank you very much. I'm really, I feel really privileged to be to give this talk to you. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I've also prepared a free content infrastructure diagnostic tool. If you scan the QR code that you
cool.
see in the screen, so before you leave, make sure to scan it. And yeah, I really love to continue this conversation, whether it's about linked data, semantic architecture, or even how to convince your organization that content with a spine is a strategic asset. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much, Rafaela. Fascinating. I'm going to read out some questions. I've got loads of questions, but I may not get a chance to ask them. Somebody's asked, is shared meaning a prerequisite? Are things that are subjective in terms of meaning something that cannot be included in IAs?
Well, they can, but the most important thing is not so much the shared meaning, but having a clear definition of what a concept means to your organization. So we've already talked about um, how modeling is dealing with concepts that exist in reality, and
Mm,
of course we need to look outside. But sometimes those things in reality mean slightly different things within an organization.
yeah,
So you need to make sure that when you want the AI to work with how your organization understands a concept, make sure that you also define that concept in the terms that your organization understands it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Another question, how would intent fit into the model in the sense that we often want people to do something as a result of using content? Do you think that outcome of using content is as important as the content itself? Good
Oh yeah.
question.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because otherwise, if content doesn't have a purpose, which is the intent, then it it doesn't make sense to even create that content, right? So it really the best way to make content a strategic asset is to make sure that it meets a purpose or a job to be done or an intention that the organization has to meet that purpose. Otherwise, it's just a waste of yeah time, money, effort.
Yeah,
Really.
I've got two more questions. I'm just going to rattle those off, even though we're probably going to run over a little bit. What somebody's asking, I understand what they're saying here. How do you talk with normal mortals about this? That's a good question.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's a really good question, because I've been struggling for 3 years now about this. um I like only 3 years ago I discovered what a knowledge graph is, and I dived really deep into that rabbit hole. But the way I talk to this with mortals is linked data is basically making statements. So it's creating sentences. So when you have an object, a verb, and a subject, or the other way around, I'm not sure, but that's already the beginning of linked data. So
Yeah.
just look at the model and start making sentences that a 10-year-old can understand. And that's basically where you start discussing this with models.
Yeah, there are more questions, I'm afraid, but we're out of time. That's really fascinating, Rafaela, and that,
Thank you.
I love a lead diagram, and that was a really good lead diagram.